Good evening, everyone. I'll give a minute for everyone to settle down. In the meanwhile, please let us know in the chat box which city are you in right now. I can see Sunita ma'am joining in from Indraprasth International School, Dwarka, New Delhi. Kiran ji from Hyderabad. Narendra sir from Jaipur. Prajakta ma'am from, we have Sunbeam. Fantastic. Shalom Hills International. Please say my hello to Dennis George. Good evening from Ranchi. Pooja Sani ma'am from Bilda Shishu Vihar. Subodh Public School. Brilliant. I think we have a fantastic diversity here. Just so that I am clear, do I have the permission to start, Swati ma'am, Sandeep sir?
Yes, I think good idea to start. Yes.
Brilliant. Good evening, everyone. Just going to set up a context here that, as a media house that I run, ScooNews, we constantly interact with school leaders across the country. And over the last few months, one question has come up again and again. कि रवि सर ये कौशल बोध है क्या, and how do we actually implement कौशल बोध in schools? So this is one question which has really been popping up in all the conversations that I'm having with school leaders and educators. And how do we actually implement Kaushal Bodh in schools, not as a document, not as a checkbox, but in a way that truly works on the ground. And instead of trying to answer it ourselves, I thought let's do what we do best. I mean, bring the right people into the room. And तब मैंने सोचा कि ये कौशल बोध के बारे में who's the right person to kind of invite. Then of course the first name that came was Sandeep Sethi sir. Sandeep sir is pretty much a name that needs no introduction. He's the famous education festival man of the country, where he has been organizing some amazing history festivals across the country and some fantastic initiatives, education through monuments and financial literacy through POCARD and Fard Se Pad and so many other things. I'm sure, if you Google his name, you would come across many of his initiatives. And I'm pretty sure many of our participants may have worked with Sandeep sir. So that was the first name that popped up in my head. And then I could think of someone else, like Swati and I have been talking about Kaushal Bodh since quite a few months now. And Swati does fantastic work at Kitchenership. And I thought, I reached out to Swati. Hey, Swati, would you like to partner with us? Because, this is something that educators from across the country are very curious to understand. And since you have some amazing experience, then would you be interested to partner with us and Sandeep Sethi sir, where you both come online and spend some 45-50 minutes to kind of, not just talk about jargons and not just talk about what goes in the policy, but a very easy implementation, how people can implement that from the classrooms tomorrow, and it should be a virtual masterclass, and let's not call it a webinar. And thank you, Swati and Sandeep sir, you both agreed to come on board. And honestly, I couldn't have thought of anyone better than you two to lead this conversation. So today, as I said, it's not a webinar. This is a 1-hour masterclass. And I would strongly request everyone to stay fully present, listen carefully. ये वो webinar नहीं है जहाँ पे हम certificates के लिए आए हैं. यहाँ पे सच में कुछ सीखने को मिलेगा आपको. और अगर नहीं सीखने को मिले तो मुझे डांट दीजिएगा बाद में, मेरा ऐसे publicly नहीं, इधर ही chat में या email पे, because I'm going to send you a thank you email in which we'll have fantastic resources from both Swati and Sandeep sir. उसमें reply करके please let me know, if I may have moved up somewhere. So please pay your attention, listen carefully, and when you have questions, please use the दो एक chat है जहाँ पे आप chat कर रहे हैं अभी, और एक Q&A वाला section है. तो अगर आपके कुछ questions हो स्वाति मैम से या संदीप सर से, तो वो Q&A में आप सवाल करिए. वहाँ पे आपके comments वगैरह हैं, thoughts कुछ हैं, तो वो आप chat पे बात कर सकते हैं वहाँ पे. And let's keep the flow clean and meaningful. So a very quick housekeeping before we begin. आपको म्यूट करने की जरूरत नहीं, आप वेबिनार में हैं, आपकी मीटिंग नहीं है तो कुछ दिक्कत नहीं है. लॉट ऑफ पीपल रेज हैंड्स, तो वो अभी ना करें आप. जब Q&A का टाइम आएगा तो Q&A में you can paste your questions and our speakers will pick it up from there. And if there are any technical issues, कि मुझे आवाज नहीं आ रही है, वीडियो सुनने में नहीं आ रहा है, 95% आपके इंटरनेट में प्रॉब्लम होगी, but still keep it on the chat so that we can also be aware. I mean, if there is some technical fault from my side, and from there, I think, I should now invite Sandeep sir to set the context so we can get started. And Sandeep sir, अगर आप चालू करेंगे और कुछ एक context set करें, and then I'll get Swati to come and kind of talk more about it. Over to you, Sandeep sir.
Thank you, Ravi, and thank you, Swati, for having me here. And I do hope that I live up to your expectations. I'm going to give a lot of references of the experiences that I've had in the past few years and understood things either from the public domain or from the job profile domain. सबसे पहले हम समझें कि ये क्यों जरूरत पड़ा, तो थोड़ा सा हम लोग सब देखें कि schools are not only in the cities and the villages also. And अगर हम schools की बात करते हैं तो अगर आप देखो कि colleges के जो number होंगे, जैसे हम नीचे जाते जाएंगे देखेंगे कि colleges जब X number के हैं, 12 तक के schools उससे ज्यादा हैं, 10 तक के schools उससे ज्यादा हैं, 8 तक के schools उससे ज्यादा हैं, 5th तक के schools उससे ज्यादा हैं, nursery schools उससे भी ज्यादा हैं. तो
Sandeep sir, sorry, I'm interrupting. I can read in the chat, there are a few people from South India, and they would appreciate it.
Yeah, I'll do mix that way. So we have to just keep in mind as to what is the pyramid and why is it going in a pyramid shape, that you've got maximum nursery schools in the country. And as we're going up, the number of schools are reducing. And by the time we come to college, the number has really gone down. So there is a withdrawal of students, dropout of students in the country. And there could be so many reasons: village, gender issue, poverty. There could be plenty of reasons. So that is a constant battle the government is fighting to see to it that the dropout ratio is less. So how do you make the dropout ratio less? Because you don't make things easy, but you simplify things for people. If everyone was only having science to study, the number of students would have been very less in the country. But you've got science, you've got commerce, you've got humanities, you've got so many mixed up things coming up. That is where they realize that they should have vocational subjects also. That was one way of making the students stay back in school. Not school hours, but to continue schooling after 8th also, after 10th also. So first vocational came somewhere in grade 11th and 12th. And not only academic subjects, you had vocational subjects also. Then they realized somewhere in the journey that after graduation, it's a very bad scene when people don't get jobs. When I was a student, BCom was something very big. But when I became a teacher, MCom and MBA was something very big. But as on today, MBA and MCom is also nothing big. So what's going wrong and how to rectify it? Then they realized that 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, the focus was on competitive examinations. And after 12th, the life students go into graduation, that is college years. And then after that, they may be employed or they may be unemployed. So where are we going to teach skills to them? 9 to 12 was not the right time. So the right time was 6th, 7th, 8th. If you at least have a skill with you, you can possibly create a hobby and take it up during the graduation years or maybe after that, if you need it for your life survival. This is where the skill subjects have come up. Then the name was changed into Kaushal Bodh, where very prominently now it is coming up in grade 6th, 7th, and 8th. And you've seen in the past few years, there are at least 33, 35, 40 subjects down the line where the schools can pick up for level 1, 2, 3, that is oblique grade 6, 7, 8. So once you understand the need of it, you understand why we should be doing it. Because if the schools don't understand the need, the society needs them. The society needs lot more things. So that has to come up at the right age. And that is where the government got things introduced in school as Kaushal Bodh. Over to you, Swati.
Yeah, no, thanks, Sandeep sir, for that context, because that is so important to understand the context behind. And I can tell you from my experience, because I've been working in this space from 2019, when probably NEP 2020 also wasn't, yet released. And I can vouch for this, that I'm not talking about the dropouts, but I can tell you about the attendance, that how when we implement such a program in schools, school teachers have shared anecdotal data with us saying that, the attendance improves and students who are usually not present in school start attending school. So absolutely, I think there is a very important need at this hour. And, I will quickly take the conversation forward and try and unpack what Kaushal Bodh, you know, kind of talks about. And I'm sure all of you have some idea because you've gone through the circulars, you've gone through a lot of documents that have been shared. There are books that are available. So how are we implementing this with the schools that we work with? I would love to share some of that. And I hope, you all can go back inspired as well as, confident enough to be able to, start from somewhere. And that's, I think, most important. So I'll just take a second to share my screen. So that we can, so, how is CBSE making skill education meaningful for grade 6 to 8? And we've already understood what's the need and why are we implementing it in grade 6 to 8. Let me take this opportunity to quickly introduce me and my co-founder, Tanya, who's also part of the panel. She's here. We started this, we probably call ourselves, back in 2019, Moms on a Mission. And we had our little kids, and the litmus test was something that we cannot give them as a feature or as a content or as a recommendation, will not feature in kidspreneurship. So that became our, so to say, guiding compass for creating anything that we did post 2019. From there to being recognized as a top 50 edtech startups from Holon IQ in 2024 was a long way, but I would say that this journey was very, very, we consider it was so enriching as an experience for us. It was hard because when there was no mandate, it was very hard to convince schools, but we only focused on schools that knew that this is going to be very important for them in the future. And, I have to compliment some of the schools who are here. Sunbeam is one of the schools that we closely work with, and they implemented it, back in 2024 with us. We had this video that we want to share, but unfortunately the audio is not working. So I'll skip the video, but we will share this video towards the end of the virtual masterclass so that it shows you how it's not just content or curriculum and how such a program is actually a system or an ecosystem that should be sitting. So it's a cultural mind shift, not just, with the teachers, but with the students, the parents, the managements. Everybody has to come on board when something as massive as this kind of launches in school. But, what we will quickly go through in the next, say, 20, 30 minutes is what CBSE actually expects. And I will not spend a lot of time here because probably some of you already know, but I will try and unpack what are the challenges that you've expressed while registering for this webinar, that what do you foresee as a challenge. So taking those as 10 common challenges that have come up from all the participants that are here, and then addressing how have we solved those challenges so that you can get some ideas as to how those challenges can be solved. And then I'll obviously go back to Sandeep sir to understand what are some of the things that schools can do in order to just get started, and we'll open the room floor for the audience. I hope that's something we will be able to kind of cover in the next 40 minutes that we have. So I'll begin by saying that, of course, the whole idea is to ensure that, the drop-off rates reduce, but eventually what the students are going to do in life, they need creative thinking abilities, they need problem solving, collaboration, communication, entrepreneurial mindset, and all of those skills. But our traditional education system focuses on academic skills and not pointing towards any school, any country, any geography. This is, I think, a thing which is there across, where 80% of the edtech spends, even now in K-12, is happening in academics, right? We're trying to help them, get better at English, maths, and science constantly. And important things are being left for extracurriculars, right? Which is where now the mandate actually brings them in the timetable. So that's the reason this is important, because even the industry wants, And 6, 7, 8 is the right age to get started. Students prioritize what gets measured. And we have seen this across, right? If you tell them that English, maths, and science are important, come exams and they will drop everything. They will only look at it as a good to have, not a must have thing. So from that perspective also, it should start appearing on the report cards as well. It should start, in fact, somebody who's not great in English, maths, or science can have the best creative ideas, right? But that doesn't get neither assessed nor reported. So the student feels that he's doesn't feel very confident about himself, right? So we've seen those changes happening once we started reporting, how they are on their empathy quotient or how they are on their creative skills, right? Now let's, get back to what CBSE has introduced. It is in two parts. One is skill education, which is all these topics like artificial intelligence, design thinking and innovation, financial literacy. Every topic that matters today is covered through, the booklets that are being provided by NCRT on the website. So which is something which is very, very important. The other thing is Kaushal Bodh itself, which is project-based learning. So 3 themes, 9 projects across 3 years, those are the things that have to be done. The 3 themes are quite broad enough for the child to, come up with different projects for every year. Now, having said this, this is what the skill education encompasses. Skill modules, which is actually learning about some of the important topics that are not covered, in the traditional education or academic system, and also had, project or learning by doing things, right? So these are the 2 broad areas that get covered in skill education. Of course, without having, there are roles that are defined. I'm sure some of you in the room are also master trainers. Some of you are facilitators, teachers who are, given this mandate to deliver this program in the schools, and there are school principals and all, and everybody has their role and responsibilities within this whole scheme of things. Why skill-based education is essential? Let's get this right. It's not because CBSE has mandated this, right? It is because this is the need of the hour. Our students need this. And, there is this famous philosopher, Yuval Noah Harari, and I read something which really deeply resonated with me the other day, that this is the first time in the history, nobody has an idea what the world will look like in 10 years, right? So we can't predict what will the job market look like, how will social relations look like. So we cannot have, any narrow subject. We cannot focus on any narrow subject. We need to focus on head, which is the intellectual skills, which, we already do, heart, which is your social skills, empathy, and your hands, which are these project based. And it is actually the combination that will help us, have a leverage against AI, which, we're all kind of grappling with. So it's very important that we start early, we start with the right, skill sets for our students. Students have to understand, and I think whatever we do at Kidspreneurship, we keep students at the core of it, right? How would a student, if we were to make our assessment, how would a student feel when they saw their report card? That's the starting point. And then we start working backwards on how the report card should look like, where the data points are coming from, so on and so forth. So the students will have to have a multi-dimension. Earlier, it was very clear, great marks, great career. It was a very linear progression that they had. Today, they have to have, multiple dimensions. They should be able to actually apply the academic concepts in real life. Otherwise, just knowing something will, even AI knows that, right? So active learning with focus on skill and mindsets, and, to be able to build something, to be able to ideate and then come up with and actually build something, to be able to reflect and improve are all facets of a capable student today. And we should all be nurturing a capable student and not just a good student. Now, CBSE vision is there, the guidance document is there, the whole teacher enablement plan is there. What we are talking about here is an implementation layer, right? So, you can do this by yourself, you can have a trusted partner. We are happy to help schools kind of have that implementation layer as well to achieve meaningful projects and skill-based education in schools, because that's the need of the hour. Now, some of the components, these are 10 components. It's almost like a checklist that we've created of starting from content to having lesson plans for 110 hours for grade 6, 7, 8, to having assessments that can actually assess the child, to having them to create their portfolios and documentation, arranging parent talks and industry exposure, which is again a very integral part of what has been laid out. Having composite skill lab. In fact, any school that wants to get affiliated with CBSE in the next, will have to have a composite skill lab if they need affiliation. Certification, for the students that they've done a program called Kaushal Bodh, having a Kaushal Mela, operations, operationally ensuring that there is, 5 sessions per week for this, and projects on 3 themes. So this really is a checklist, and we'll definitely send this across, with a lot of other stuff as well. But if you were to look at this checklist, this is all that needs to be done. While this only is 10, there's a lot that, goes within all of this. I don't want to make you guys hungry. I know we're not, in the India time zone. It's not a meal time, so I can afford to put this picture. What I really want to say is the common ingredients are given, right? But the dish will be different. So every school can implement it in its own way. And that's the beauty of it, that you have your own students, you have your own teachers, your own context and culture. So while the ingredients are there, the recipe and the implementation will vary. So whenever we work with the schools, in fact, all the schools that we work with across the board have implemented skill education in a very different way. And there's no right or wrong, right? So I think the focus should be on trying to see what's your unique style in which you want to implement this. And there's a lot of room for that, frankly. Okay, now coming to the challenges that we've received, so that, we keep it very pointed to things that you want to understand about Kaushal Bodh. The first challenge is, of course, while there is a lot of syllabus that's there, the books are there, the format is not as engaging, especially for our students currently, because again, they have gone to, they watch a lot of videos, they like different formats, they like learning in a very different way, which a lot of edtechs are doing for English, maths, and science currently, right? So that's the irony. We should be focusing all those things, creating those interactive content for them to be able to, enjoy the process and enjoy what they're learning. So that's exactly what we do. We've created workbooks which have a very global context as well, but are very engaging. So, you can slide and, you can get a score. There's a pinata that you can break. There is a 5-minute video to understand design thinking, which, the narrative is that the kids are talking to kids. So all those things are very important when you want to engage that audience, which is grade 6, 7, 8. So that's one thing that has to be kept in mind, that the content has to be very engaging for them. The second is, while there's there is that projects have to be done, and there are 3 themes available, but what project, right? What exactly each child should do? In fact, a lot of the sessions that we do is like, can they do group projects? Then how will we assess them in the group projects? And those are very valid questions, right? So again, that's something which is a very valid concern, but I think the guidance has to be provided. And the way we've done it, and I can share that with you, is we have a tool where each student puts their own theme, their own strengths, their own observation of things around them. What are the problems they would love to solve? What are their strengths? Based on these inputs, they get certain ideas, and they can shortlist those ideas and have their own unique project, even within the 3 themes that are given. So that way, it has to be very thoughtful, because it's not just a project that they will do in a month. It's a project which is an ongoing process for them. So they have to stay with it. For them to stay with that project, they really have to do something which is very close to their heart. One of the other things that really came in as, I'm not an educator that can teach skill education, right? So delivery by teachers who are not trained to deliver skill-based modules is also one of the challenges that came up, when we asked for it. And frankly, this is what we say. The role has changed from deliver 1D to actually 3Ds, which is now the teachers are designing, they are discovering what are the strengths of the students, because everybody has to do a different project, everybody's, doing something else, and then driving them to kind of, work on things that they kind of truly believe in. So it's moved from 1D to 3D, and that's how we kind of look at the teacher's role. And how we kind of help assist the teachers is that, we've of course designed, we've given them tools that can enable discovery, and also given them, tools that can drive the teachers to do the facilitation in the best possible way, because teachers in this whole journey are co-learners. They're not teachers, they're not mere, they're not delivering the sessions, they're learning with the students, they're facilitating the entire experience, and that's how it should be also looked at. Various teachers resources available. The next challenge, very common, timetable compliance. And I think my first reaction to this always is that, do we ever question why is English, math, science in the timetable, right? Because we know that it's important. We've decided that it's important. This is equally important. So firstly, that mindset shift needs to happen. Secondly, of course, the CBSE, this is something we've picked up from the CBSE website, where they've given how there could be 5 sessions that can be accommodated for VE, which is vocational education. So again, this is something that, but having 5 sessions is one thing on the timetable, but having clarity as to the whole year, what are the students going to do? How will each hour look like? What will be the split? Those are important things that need to be spelled out very clearly. And we do this with every school, and every school's calendar looks very different, frankly. Again, what's the journey? What are the topics they're learning? Where are they doing the project work? When is the industry exposure happening? All that clarity has to be at the very beginning, so that, there is a lot more confidence even in the teacher when she's delivering something like this. Okay, this is the biggest of the challenges, I feel. And I would love for if there's a poll that can go up, because this is something that stood out for me, when I was looking at all the challenges that you've shared, because most of you have shared, and, I was looking at the document of Kaushal Bodh, it actually says that teachers have to design their own tools and techniques for formative and, summative assessments, which is not a very easy task, because we've spent a lot of time doing this, and it takes a while for us to have something which truly reflects a child. So, can we have the poll just for us to understand, right? How is it that you guys are doing this right now?
Yeah, I'll just share it.
Just to kind of I would love to see the results. Able to see my screen there? We can see the results as well as you're all voting. I'm glad to see that a lot of only 3% are saying it's not assessed, not reported, but a large part of you are also saying that it's done through observation, which is lack of any available resource. This is the best way to also do it, through projects and observation. And then there are structured rubrics frameworks as well that are available, right? So just to go back and share, you're able to see my screen as challenge 5 assessments.
Yes.
This is how we've structured our framework, and something for you to also perhaps think about, take back, starting with baseline and doing a post-assessment. We, of course, have a tool called RealQ, which assesses students. It's an AI-powered tool that assesses them on their application of knowledge on English, math, science. But when they give answers, they're actually assessed on creativity. Are they able to understand what's the problem? Are they able to give solutions? Are they able to empathize? So while it's a combination of the two. So we've kind of combined to come up with something called RealQ. Then there is formative evaluations. I'm sure a lot of you are already doing those formative evaluations as well. Then we have a tool for teacher observations, and we have something called student reflection as well. So this creates our entire framework of how we assess. And again, like I said, something for all of you to consider, because when we get inputs from all these places, the report that gets generated is actually a real picture of where the student stands, right? So again, going to what Kaushal Bodh has specified, they want a written test, which the RealQ covers. They want oral presentations as well. So, again, we've all been doing Viva, but how effectively are we able to capture what are the results through a Viva? So we do a pitch analyzer where students, pitch their ideas or pitch what project they're doing, and it kind of gives them an analysis of what they're doing. Activity book, of course, the self-learning assignments, portfolio creation is 10% of it, and teacher observation actually constitute 20% of it. So again, there's a framework that we have. It kind of almost maps with what has been given as well. Only thing is we use all of this digitally so that, there's less workload on the teacher. But this is the right way to go about thinking of an assessment tool as well. So yeah, I mean, something for, these are the formative assessments where the keep engaging with the content, and we know where they are. The sample reports that we share with the schools, some of the formative assessment reporting dashboard. The next one is portfolio and documentation, which essentially means that, if you're doing something, it has to be documented. Now, physical documentations, of course, over a period of time, you lose them, or you're not able to kind of, work on them further once you're done. So there has to be a digital portfolio that needs to be created. Now, there's a difference between just creating a portfolio, and that's something, we talk a lot about, because there are platforms like Seesaw and Canva that allow you to upload the portfolio. But how is it that you can build the portfolio? And to me, these are very different things. So when a students upload a project with us, they also get some feedback from the teacher, which is of course powered by AI, because it has to be, standardized, and then they work further on the project. And once they're happy, they actually publish it and use it as their portfolio for, say, higher education application and stuff like that. So in a sense, they are constantly not just, they don't lose it to their memory, or they don't lose that project. They're still kind of thinking about it. It becomes part of their portfolio. And these are modern day certificates. I mean, while we were growing up, we used to collect a lot of certificates. Today, students are focusing a lot more on their portfolios than collecting certificates. And that's more valuable from all standpoints. So here's where they kind of submit the projects. This is how the projects look like. They get their feedback. They further work on the project. And, just to give you a little glimpse of that. Parent engagement, expert talks, exposure visits. I think, all of these external people talking to the students, and then school having parents, as people who kind of understand what skill education is, what the school is trying to do, what CBSE is trying to do, right, is something very important, which also is a part of it. But, that has to be done meaningfully, because, when we engage with some of the experts, it's all laid down in the calendar right in the beginning. What is the reason we are getting this expert at this point in time? So that kind of helps them plan a challenge around that. What are the submissions that will happen? So it's not just somebody coming, giving a motivational talk and going away. Everything has to have, and it has to be done intentionally with a purpose in mind. Composite skill lab, I already spoke about it, that, we will be, we do focus on composite skill lab. And one of the things I've seen when I speak to schools is, the moment we talk about skill lab, we think 3D printers, we think, a lot of those high-tech gadgets. But composite skill lab is not about all of that. I think what we really do is we keep students at the center of it. We can curate as many, kits as we want, as and when it goes. But the whole idea is, what's the learning experience that the students is getting out of it? So with that thought process in mind, we kind of approach the composite skill lab as well. And I think that's how the schools should approach it, not get enamored by all the fancy gadgets, because 90% of them don't get used in year one. So that's something, we've seen over the years. Certification that has to be given, again, that's more admin work that the teacher has to do. So we ensure that that happens digitally through the platform as well. So you can see how tech can be your best friend in order to kind of, do some of the things that the teachers are doing. Organizing Kaushal Melas, I think this is not a challenge. This probably got feared only twice, because schools are amazing at doing this. We have seen it. They do it better than anybody else. But yes, there are certain frameworks and structures that we are able to provide the schools as well, which to support the whole thing, but the schools do a great job of it. Now, one of the challenge I thought, and honestly, I don't think the time is enough for me to address that, because this is a bigger one. How to integrate skill education within existing subjects. So we do have a session that we're doing on 24th of April to kind of just unpack this. And we in fact have an entire program dedicated for the teachers for this. So if any of you are interested, we'll be happy to share the information on this one, because this is, again, like I said, a very large piece that can be covered in a few hours. This is our initiative that I wanted to talk about, that we've started this YouTube channel where we will be launching videos every Tuesday. For any of you who want to start consuming content, Entrepreneurship Ki Pathshala is our new initiative. So freely available content, please use this. Please use this in your classrooms to get started with what can be shown. You will have all topics that are there in the skill education for you to be able to show it to the students. Yes, I will. Because I was being very mindful that we do have Sandeep sir only till 4:50. So I just rushed through my presentation. I hope it made sense to you guys, and I would love to also ask, I mean, if there's any feedback, anything that you
So the
have.
questions start pouring in. Swati, can I just add a few points here?
Yes,
It
please,
will
sir.
definitely help
Yes,
everyone. And this
absolutely.
is the basis of what you've spoken to us.
Yes.
So the teachers can be teachers who are already teaching in school, because it's very difficult for schools to appoint fresh teachers for this. And as it is, the time taken out is from the existing time schedule itself. So of course,
Correct.
identify teachers as passion. Just don't force them to do it. If they're not happy doing it, the subject will be lost out. Try to keep your activities local. Try to keep local crafts, local food, local anything which is related to your particular city, because local performing arts, local music, anything which is local, because that is where the students are strongly connected with. Take help from parents, take help from grandparents, take the help from the entire community. I'm giving one example. I've just been to Hazaribagh, Ranchi, where one school tried this out. They got a nice huge piece of land. They divided small plots to children, and they started growing things on that. So it fits in the timetable perfectly well. Over a period of 3 months, they had everything growing there practically possible. So if you have some arrangements like that, you can think on lines like that. There's so much of integration and holistic education happening, because a lot was coming up from the existing subjects timetable. It was just being repeated there in skill. It was the best things to happen. Another thing, Swati, what you can do in all your books is please try to add, because of using the word entrepreneur, if we can add a little component, keeping in mind the level of the child, of costing, that would really help children to start thinking a little more practical also. And teachers, suggestion to you, just go on the CBSE website, ask for vocational subjects, ask for the manuals, and you'll find, I think, not less than 40 of them, which are related to various cities. There's embroidery, there's mask making, there's puppetry, there's black pottery, there's blue pottery, there's red pottery, ceramics, name it, and you'll find a whole lot of things. And that number is still growing. So the best part is NCERT has not restricted you to specify on a particular craft. They've given an example of one, but you can replicate and adapt it to the craft of a city. So the city craftsmen should be used in your school. The city, like I was in Lucknow recently. So I said, why are you not doing the embroidery work of Lucknow? So they all realized that they should be doing that. But of course, get the passionate teachers on board. Back to you, Swati.
No, absolutely. So those are very good points. In fact, that's the point I was touching upon when I spoke about the composite skill lab, that it has to be done with whatever is locally available. So thanks for, kind of saying that. And, I am very curious to know that if you had to give one practical starting point to the schools, that how do they go about it? Because there's this initial inertia I can see. They want to do it, but there are a lot of questions. So what would be that starting point, according to you, sir, that can get the
I think I would go
schools?
for plants, because that's one thing which every school has, and something
Right.
which the school needs, maybe something to do with the canteen. If you already have a canteen, that means you already got a kitchen, you've got a kitchen, so you can do something there. So these are all the things that we've done in schools when these were not introduced as any side subjects. We were doing it in a day-to-day class activities itself. On parent teachers meet, we were making things and selling during entrepreneurship classes, business studies. We were doing a lot of practical, learn to earn practical work. So I think the initial thing that a school can pick up is plants, because they are there everywhere. Start with potted ones, go later on to more elaborate things. But I think that's one thing. Or pick up any local craft. Ask your art teacher; she'll be happy doing so much more in that. And try to pick up food and events in school, so that can have again a direct connect. Back to you.
Right. Right. Uh, and one of the things that we've always done with the schools that we work with, and I would love to know your thoughts on it, how to get parents on board with this, because parents are a little confused. They hear a lot on social media, but they don't know exactly what to expect. So how do you get
They
parents on
just have to
board
check
with
with
something?
parents what businesses they are in, send a circular to them, ask them what they would like to get involved in, and you can start interacting with them.
That's a good way to engage them as well. I think one of the schools that we spoke to actually, yes.
Immediate neighborhood.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Those are some interesting ways. And
The
do you
Cardinals
recommend
worked
any
way
class
back
size? Yes.
1974. In 73, 74 in my school, we had this community SUPW work and we were doing gardening. We were responsible of making all the bouquets, all the fresh flower arrangements at the foyer, supervisors, tables, principals, chair, etc. That was our job. We were
Right.
doing it from the local garden of the school.
Amazing. No, I think to me, all of this is music to ears because I've been advocating this, and to know that this is a mandate, it's great to know that schools will now be definitely look. And I think everybody has the intent. Everybody that I speak to has the intent. It's only how to get started. So I hope they've got some insights into how can they get started. Thank you for those ideas, sir. And yeah, I think there's a Mentimeter link also. We'd love to know that what are some of the things now you think about when you think about on Kaushal Bodh, skill education, entrepreneurship, all of that. What comes to your mind? So, Tanya, are you able to share if there are responses on that Mentimeter? The link is in the chat. So,
We'll just wait for a few more responses to come in.
right.
Yeah.
I'll just paste the link again. So yeah, just share what exactly do you think, and again, the room is open now for Q&A because we'd love to have questions from the audience as well. What specific questions were not probably addressed here, something that still remains unanswered, we'll be happy to answer. Sir is also here, so anything that I can see, there are questions. Yeah, there are actually questions already. How does Kaushal Bodh from middle stage feed into the compulsory discipline of vocational education and individuals in society in grade 9 and 10? So, sir, somebody wants to know, I'm not sure if I can see who has asked this, but how does Kaushal Bodh from middle stage, so 6, 7, 8, of course, there is a lot more documentation on that, but how will this kind of translate into when it comes to grade 9
So
and
when
10?
you come to grade 9th and 10th, you got those vocational subjects, which all being linked up to 6th, 7th, 8th itself. So they began something in 12th and 11th, they brought it down to 9th and 10th, they brought that down to 6th, 7th. So now they're saying that what has come down has to go up also the right way. So whatever you're doing in 6th, 7th, 8th is coming up as vocational subjects in grade 9th and 10th, which is leading up to subjects again in grade 11th and 12th. So they mapped it up beautifully, the whole line there.
Right. Sounds
And
great.
also,
Yes.
that was a question asked by Sudeshna Roy. I can read.
Okay.
If you want, I can actually read out. The next question is by Sujit Chakrabarti, who's asking: Is Kaushal Bodh is new look or a new version of Nayi Talim? Sujit ji is working in Vidya Gyan Leadership Academy. If any one of you would want to answer, is Kaushal Bodh a new version of Nayi Talim?
Oh, that's something I've heard for the first time. Nahi Talim.
Definitely is. See, नई तालीम was गांधी टाइम, राइट? तो तब से लेके अब तक कितनी चीजें हो रही है, बीच में उसका नाम अलग अलग हो जाता है. They change it sometimes to SUPW work, to community service work. नई तालीम was all this only. नई तालीम is still happening.
Right.
Sure. Of course, I mean, there are a couple of people who would want to asking they would want to join the session of 24th April. Of course, we will send you the link of that and the link of the Pathshala also. Another question is, what is the difference between Kaushal Bodh and Kaushal Vikas? This is by Anilji.
But you'll have to take that up.
Am I audible?
Yes.
There is a question by Anilji who says, what is the difference between Kaushal Bodh and Kaushal Vikas?
I don't think I think they're both the same, but I'll let Sandeep sir answer that. Is there a difference, sir, between Kaushal Bodh and Kaushal Vikas? So you're not audible. Is sir on mute? Yes, sir, you're on mute right now. If you can unmute yourself.
The words are very similar to each other, but that's the process how we're going up from there. At the same time, they're different also.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you, Sandeep sir. I know you have a hard stop. You have something starting in the next 5-10 minutes. Would you want to say a quick goodbye, Sandeep sir, and maybe Swati, if you have anything
Thank
left.
you so much, Swati ma'am. Thank you, Ravi sir. And we're always available for any sort of questions. The questions can come to you. You send it to us and we'll send them back with answers, right? So no worries at all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sandeep sir.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Perfect. Over to you, Swati.
Right. So, again, like, yes, Tanya, you want to share this?
Yes, I can just share my screen. So it's very interesting to see all the responses that are coming in. But yeah, this is from all of you. What Kaushal Bodh and skill education is about, and rightly so. I mean, some of the words that we see here are exactly what we understand Kaushal Bodh to be and what it promises to be. It is something that basically enhances experiential learning and education, hands-on skill education, of course, vocational education, projects. Very interesting to see people have added things like local, taking from some of the learnings from today, Kaushal Mela, local crafts. So I think it's really lovely to see that everyone was listening in intently, and you're already applying some of the learnings from the session. So keep your answers coming in. We'd love to see if there's anything different that comes up, and we'll include it in our word cloud.
Yeah, so it's interesting to see the word cloud. At the same time, there are questions. How do we do assessments of individual students or group projects in Kaushal Bodh? So again, this is something, we addressed while we were kind of, looking at students uploading their projects. So while the project is the same, if they're working in a group on the same project, but their reflections are very different. So when a student A who's working with student B, student A writes about the project, they write it in a very different way, right? Their reflections, their understanding of what the step-by-step process was is always very different. So it gets assessed basis how they kind of document the project in their own way, whereas a student B would document it in their own way. So that's how, even though it's a group project, it can be assessed for individuals as well. And that's how, we do it. And we've seen results coming very differently, even with the same group project. This next question is how Kaushal Bodh sessions can be accommodated along with regular lessons of 7 or 8 periods in the timetable. So, of course, when the mandate has come for 5 sessions every week, there will be reduction in the syllabus for the academic subjects, right? So that's something where they're reducing the number of hours that were supposed to be spent on academic subjects, and that, which is coming to the vocational education. So I think operationally you'll have to see where you can reduce the syllabus and accommodate this. We have always, when we work with schools, say if 5, so we have to start from somewhere, right? We can't achieve 5 in year 1 perhaps, but somewhere we have to kind of start with. So yeah, something will reduce from the regular sessions, and that's where you can accommodate. Any other questions do we have? We do have a few videos, and we'll definitely be sharing them post the session. So those will give you a very good insight into how, like I said, it's a whole system, right? From assessment to curriculum to teacher training to also projects. It doesn't happen in silos. It's not just curriculum or it's not just assessment. It's a complete cultural shift as well that will happen in school over a period of time, where all stakeholders come on board, trying to see how they can contribute to the change. I can see some of you are also writing in the chat. So if you have questions, it would be great. So Sangeeta has just written how many times a week for the session. So it's 5 sessions in a week that are currently recommended. But again, like I said, to start small, start from any number of sessions, but it's 110 hours of the whole vocational education in the whole year. Dr. Shalini is asking, can we get recording? I think this session has been recorded. So I think ScooNews, Ravi, maybe, from your side, somebody can send the recording if somebody is wanting. Pooja is asking, would you please guide on activities given in the book? All are mandatory to conduct or slight changes can be made. So, the guidelines are very broad. So when we talk about activities, there are themes that are given, and there are 3 themes that are given. And within those themes, you have complete freedom to pick and choose who you would like to, what the student would like to do, not just, and the students can pick their own projects based on the theme. So yes, there is a lot of leeway there that can be used. Would like to attend the workshop on 24th April. Yes, we will be sending details for the 24th April session. I see a lot of you asking for that. That's something that we'll share over the email. Anything? I hope I've not missed on any questions, because some of them are coming in the chat as well. So if you have questions, I would recommend, you write those questions. Is art the basis of education? Book by Devi Prasad can help teachers, educators to understand Kaushal Bodh. I haven't come across this book, but I would definitely, I can check and I can, get back on that. But definitely, it probably, if it's something which has some project-based this thing, it might help you, but I can look up for this book. What is the relevance of Kaushal Bodh? Well, it's like Sandeep sir said, the genesis was to ensure that, there are less dropouts from school, because 6th, 7th, 8th, those were the years when a lot of students were dropping out. But also, if you see largely, the whole things that are changing around us, it's very important to include skill education while students are in grade 6, 7, 8. In fact, we work with preschoolers in Singapore, where there is this education actually starts from that age, where they're just 5 or 6. So it's something which is highly relevant in this day and age, because I think my voice echoed. Link please for the next session. Yes, what is the relevance? I think same question. Or are all activities important, or some could be skipped as per resources available? I think from a project standpoint, 3 projects in a year are mandatory, and there is also points for that. And over 3 years, 6, 7, 8, there have to be 9 projects. The pattern of evaluation doesn't change. How will the Kaushal Bodh gain center stage importance along with academic subjects? Because until then, teachers will have to focus on syllabus completion. That's a real pain point, and we empathize that there is also syllabus completion that needs to happen. But I guess that's a balance that we will eventually arrive at. Schools that we're working with, and you'll see when we share the case studies, that they have picked up, say, they were doing this when it's not even a mandate, right? So they picked up their art and class and gave it to us as skill education class. So I think somewhere if the intent is there, we should be able to, get that time in the timetable.
I would just like to add here, with respect to that, I think this is where also a lot of self-learning for the students can come into play, where, even if the timetable doesn't fully allow, certain tools, and we've actually, we are actually working with a lot of schools delivering some of those tools, where, like Swati mentioned earlier, there are bite-sized videos, there are online quizzes, projects that students can compile online, so they don't necessarily have to have physical, or at least not as much time as is actually required by Kaushal Bodh to assign that many classes, that many hours. You can start small. You can start small, and you can start with some topics, some projects, and a lot of that can be done online as well. Like again, how Swati said before, leveraging technology and making it our strength is something that can come in handy. So yeah, that's something that can be done.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Smita has a very interesting question: how the skill education can help child appear in competitive exams, as mainly campus selection after 12 depends on competitive exams. So, a few thoughts there, Smita. Firstly, I think all of this we've seen that students start enjoying academic subjects if they start understanding the relevance, which is also goes back to the lesson that we will have, or the session that we have on April 24th, how to integrate that within your existing academic subjects as well, right? Because once they understand the relevance of why they're learning what they're learning, we all end up saying that, why did we even learn Pythagoras theorem? What's the relevance of it, right? So once they start understanding, they will definitely do much better in their competitive exams as well. And I think, but overall, if I have to talk about it, we have to get them ready for things beyond exams, right? So they have to prepare for life. So one of the things that we talk about in Entrepreneurship Pathshala is how can we make them ready for life and not just ready for exams. But to your point, yes, it does help in academic subjects as well. How to connect or engage parents. Those students are studying in residential schools. See, the parent engagement part of it is important, because when the child speaks to the parent should also be talking the same language, right? Because if they have certain experience in school when it comes to skill education, they go back home and it's all about why you're not scoring well, why your grades are falling and stuff like that, then that's a very confusing state even for the child. So for that reason, we ensure that anything like this, the parents have to be on board. They need to be speaking the same language to the child. So be it residential school, be it a day boarding, or be it regular school, a parent session online can always be done, just to ensure that parents understand the importance of why their students are going through skill education in school and what is the importance of it. For class 6, how many activities are mandatory? Three projects are mandatory. I wouldn't call them activities. I will call them projects, because activities sound like it's one off, but these are projects that go through the year. I mean, of course, there are 3 projects that go through the year. And so there will be 3 that are mandatory for class 6 students. Yes, I hope I've not missed out on any question. We have about 2 or 3 minutes left. If there is anything, we have all the links in the chat. We'll put all the links in the chat. How can you connect with us? You'll also get them over the email. So the workshop link, of course. We also have something called a readiness survey. So how ready are you in terms of launching Kaushal Bodh? There is a kind of a survey form. Once you fill that, you will actually get a report in terms of your readiness. So do fill that form as well, so that you're able to get the report. Diksha Sharma is saying projects can be chosen by teachers. Yes, they can be chosen by the teachers. They can be chosen by the students themselves as well. I mean, it's going to be a collaborative effort, like the way we do it, because some schools, that have about 1,000 students, it's very hard for the teacher to kind of choose it for the students. So the tool that we have helps students choose it, but then it can be done in collaboration with the teacher as well. Thanks, Monica. Thanks for saying that. The survey form for Kaushal Bodh readiness is in the chat already. Tanya has shared that. So you can fill that up. You will also get that over email. Portfolio suggestions, please, if samples can be shared. Yes, we can definitely share the samples. And, since I will try and see if I can share with you, since you've asked for it, maybe. Here, this is how our platform looks like. And this is where the students upload their projects. So a portfolio really would, for example, if they were working with, say, an art form, which is boho art form, right? So this is something that a student has uploaded. Again, it's a dummy project, but this is actually a project which is done by students, but it's a demo account. So it has, they've learned boho art on a piece of paper. Then they use different materials to actually, like a pouch or a tray where they created the boho art material. They, documented their entire step-by-step process. What are the challenges they faced? They also receive, assessment from the teacher. So this is how broadly a documented project looks like on the platform. So yeah, stop sharing if there's anything else. Are these skills similar to SUPW? Yes, because some of the schools actually started using SUPW time for skill education even before the mandate had come in. So yes, there will be STEM-based projects, as so that you can draw parallels to that basically. Guide us through how the portfolios will have to be maintained. See, there is no, Radhika, there is no guidelines, strict guidelines around how the portfolio has to be built, right? It could literally be the traditional way of having a portfolio, which is, your physical format, but it is ideal to have something more digitally so the student can have access to it even after, they've kind of, so it stays with them across grades. It's not just that they did it in grade 6 and they don't have access to it later on. They want to change something about it so they can do it and also make it public, so it's almost like having their own LinkedIn. So when we talk about how portfolios will have to be maintained, ideal way of maintaining them has to be, digital documentation of everything that is done. Certain projects similar to SCA in the book. What is SCA to C? I mean, I read that as Southeast Asia sometimes. So you have to tell me what SCA would mean. Thanks, Dr. Nidhi. We get some sample curriculum for the same. Yes, Eva, sample curriculum. The curriculum, of course, from CBSE is available on the NCERT website. But if you're referring to a sample curriculum from our side, we can send that. But like I said, we are opening it up for everyone. So Entrepreneurship Pathshala is what you can look for. And then there will, of course, be, if you still want something more, we'll be happy to send that across. A subject enrichment activity. Okay. SEA subject enrichment activity. So what was the question? There are certain projects similar to SCA in the book. Okay. Right. Okay. So that's more like a comment. Sure. Okay. Thanks, Rani. I know today what SCA is. So, Ravi, I think please answer questions in the question answer window, which is why I'm trying to be mindful of looking at both places. I want to ask how a teacher.
But I think we pretty much answered all the questions out there. And if there is any thing left, would you want to take a minute or should we wrap it up?
Correct.
Because
There are few in Q&A. So somebody just pointed out that they've been writing questions there. So good evening, ma'am. I want to ask how a teacher can watch almost 30 to 35 students and maintain discipline. I mean, a very good question. I think Tanya should come in here. She's just come back from a session which had about 50 plus students. So they exactly did something which was more project related. I know this is more classroom management, but when the kids are enjoying, you don't need them to be so disciplined. I mean, I say that. I don't think everybody will agree with me, but I think when they are doing their projects, there seems to be some mess. And I wrote about it on LinkedIn yesterday that start falling in love with mess, start falling in love with students doing what they want to do. At least there should be some, during the week, some time that they are able to kind of, not say be indisciplined. Tanya, you want to come in and share your views here?
Absolutely, I'm nodding in agreement because, it's absolutely organized chaos sometimes, in the classrooms, and it's really helpful for the learning, in fact. So that unstructured learning, it actually really helps students. But that, of course, having said that, does not mean that, you just let the class be indisciplined or, it shouldn't, that should not definitely be a case. So from a teacher's perspective, I can understand having a watch on students while they're working on something very hands-on. I think the few things to take care there would be safety, number one. If they're working with materials, whether it's wood or it's something like hot glue or things like that, then of course, safety is something that definitely needs your attention. So for that, what, you can do and what we do is have designated areas which are cutting stations or gluing stations, etc. So you can maintain that, and there can be very well laid out rules around it. And then students follow those rules because they want to use those materials. So, if you have rules, very strict rules in place, then students certainly follow them. So I think safety is really the biggest thing I would say to kind of keep in mind. And then, of course, using resources wisely, not wasting them, etc. Students really learn a lot of different skills, even things like minor things like how do you even use glue, how do you even use some of the materials. All of those very basic fine motor skills and gross motor skills get built. So yes, it is a tough one. The teacher, of course, if has a assistant teacher in the class, that would be ideal for your big classes. And yeah, but other than that, we have seen students get very engaged and involved in what they are doing, so they don't need that much supervision.
How are we assessing students? I think I covered that. There's an assessment framework, and the schools are supposed to come up with their own framework as well. But you can pretty much use the framework that we've provided as a basis to be able to assess students. Is it going to be reflected? Yes, that's one of the things that it's mandatory as Kaushal Bodh, that in addition to the existing report card, this report card also needs to be attached. So that's something that has to now become part of the report card. Do the students need to keep the notebook? Do they have an exam for skill education? There's no exam per se, but there are a lot of criteria, like I shared, for evaluation. One of them is, of course, the viva or the presentation. There is teacher observation. There are a lot of other ways in which it is getting evaluated as of now. There is not going to be any examination per se. How to implement it in the classroom? I think everything that's been shared is basically how to implement it. So there is a checklist. I think starting with identifying, what are the sessions, when are you going to allocate the sessions, and then going about understanding what is it that they can do within those sessions. How are we assessing the students? I think the same question has been answered. Creating our own rubrics. So rubrics has been provided in the document of Kaushal Bodh. So you can refer to that rubrics that's been provided there. But you can choose your own parameters on which you want to assess, like creative thinking, critical thinking. Those are certain things that, you can kind of choose what you want to assess the students on. Can group projects and individual projects also be opted at the same time by the students in a class? Yes. I think that's something where it's not very well, it's not specified. So yes, students are allowed to do group projects as well, but assessed separately is because every student has to have their own assessment. So even if they are engaging in a group project, the assessment has to be their own. We are all continuously talking about Kaushal Bodh and experiential learning and change in teaching methods. But until the pattern of exams are changed, this cannot be successful, because at the end of the day, the students have to write the same theoretical pen paper test with descriptive answers. When will this change? I feel you. And we are very hopeful that things will change. They are going in the right direction, and things will change. So how many projects? Again, 3 projects in the year. So over a period of 3 years, yes.
One second, Swati. I think we should also find a way, because a lot of people will have questions after the session
Correct.
as well. Is there a way where they can post questions, or maybe on your social media? Are you active somewhere where they can possibly follow,
Yeah.
post their questions, so they get an answer?
Absolutely, we can do ask questions kind of an hour as well. So I can provide, I think, our social media handle in the chat. So you can follow us there, and we will soon be doing, we keep doing this very regularly, answering questions around Kaushal Bodh. So we can host a separate session on answering, because you're right, Ravi, these are things that keep coming to your mind and you want to kind of engage even at a later stage. So very happy to address, some of the questions.
And I think we will also be sharing all the links of your social
Yes.
media, and as well as any resource that you would want us to share with all the audience today in the thank you email. So all those things will certainly be included in that. And I think, I'll take a moment to thank everyone for being with us today. And of course, Tanya and Swati, if you have any parting notes, you could possibly, share it right now, and then possibly, I'll start my very quick closing, and then a lot of teachers could possibly head back home, because I'm sure many of them are joining in from their schools right now.
Right. No, thank you so much, Ravi, for thinking about us. I mean, when you wanted to host this session, and I'm always very happy to speak with teachers. This is something we do out of passion. Like I said, this is something which I started when NEP was not even a mandate then back in 2020. So, would love to engage further and see how we can help schools implement Kaushal Bodh. So, thank you for having us.
I think one good idea to both you and Tanya is maybe a weekly on a Friday or a Saturday, maybe you could do an AMA on your Instagram or on your social media because, I'm sure, I see that, you've been invited by various different forums across the world to talk about Kaushal Bodh and entrepreneurship. I think it's a good suggestion that I would want to suggest both of you to kind of at least have one AMA on your Instagram or Facebook once a fortnight, if not a week, because a lot of
Yeah.
people still have questions coming in, and there is one repeated comment that a lot of people would want to join the session on 24th. So please do remember
Sure.
sending us the link so that we can include in the thank you email that we're going to be sending. But with that, I come to the end, and I hope this session gave you all not just ideas but clarity on where to begin. Of course, 1 hour session is not enough. On Kaushal Bodh, and better idea is to connect with Swati and Tanya on kidpreneurship. Links we will provide to all of you on the email that you registered from. A big thank you to Sandeep sir. He's already on to another masterclass, and to you, Swati, and of course Tanya, for taking out the time and sharing your experience so openly. And for those who want to take this forward, the team has shared a few useful links in the chat. Do go through them and continue the conversation. But just in case, I don't want you to scroll it up in there, but we'll kind of compile all those links and send it to you in the email after this masterclass ends. And at ScooNews, we'll continue to bring such conversations to you because these are not topics for discussions. These are shifts that need to happen. And with that, I think, thank you once again. For me, it's the start of the weekend, and I'm sure it's for Tanya and Swati. But I'm sure, you all educators, you have a 7-day week working, even if you have Saturdays and Sundays off, I know you're always working. So thank you for choosing teaching as your preferred profession. I think that's something that I would want to end with. Big salute to all of you for choosing to become teachers. You are into one of the most noble professions, and I salute you and I thank you all for doing what you are doing. You don't know, you are actually shaping the future of this country. And lots of love and respect to all of you. And see you sometime somewhere online or in person. Thank you. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Swati.
Thank you so much. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.